A rich white quarterback slapped a black girl in the middle of a crowded cafeteria because he thought nobody would dare touch him back. And honestly, for years, he was right. Teachers stayed silent. Students kept recording. The school protected him like a spoiled little king wrapped in money and politics. But what Logan Mercer didn't know was that the girl he humiliated had a grandfather powerful enough to shake an entire state. 12 hours later, 3 Navy generals walked into Blackwood High, and suddenly the bullies who laughed the loudest started looking terrified. Stay until the end, because this story keeps getting darker, more toxic, and more shocking with every twist. And trust me, the ending will absolutely not disappoint you. And before we begin, comment below where you're watching this video from. Blackwood High's cafeteria sounded like a stadium every lunch period. Trays slammed against tables. Sneakers screeched across the polished floor. And hundreds of overlapping conversations bounced beneath the bright fluorescent lights. At the center of it all sat Logan Mercer and his circle of varsity athletes, occupying the largest table in the room like they owned the entire school. In many ways, they did. Logan leaned back in his chair with the effortless arrogance of someone who had never once been told no in his life. Son of Senator Victor Mercer. Star quarterback. Future Ivy League recruit. Teachers protected him. Students feared him. Administrators avoided upsetting him. At Blackwood High, Logan Mercer wasn't just popular. He was untouchable. Zora Mitchell kept her eyes down as she moved through the crowded cafeteria, carrying a lunch tray and a stack of biology notes pressed against her chest. She hated walking through the middle rows during peak lunch hour because she could already feel the stares before anyone even spoke. Blackwood was the kind of elite school that bragged about diversity in brochures, while quietly reminding students like Zora every day that they did not truly belong there. She had learned how to survive by staying invisible. Sit in the back. Keep your grades perfect. Never react. Never give people a reason to notice you. But that day, everything went wrong in less than 3 seconds. Someone bumped into Zora from behind just as she passed Logan's table. Her plastic cup tipped sideways. Ice water splashed directly across the front of Logan Mercer's expensive cream-colored varsity jacket. The cafeteria went silent. Not quieter. Silent. Even the athletes at Logan's table froze mid-laugh. Zora stopped breathing for a second. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, reaching for napkins. Someone pushed Logan, slowly looked down at the water soaking into his jacket. Then he looked back at her with cold disbelief, like she had committed something unforgivable by existing too close to him. Around them, phones were already coming out. Students leaned forward in anticipation. Everyone sensed it immediately. Something bad was about to happen. "You serious right now?" Logan asked quietly. Zora swallowed hard. It was an accident. "Oh." One of the football players mocked. "The quota student can speak." Several people laughed. Logan stood up slowly, towering over her. "Do you even know how much this jacket costs?" I said, "I'm sorry." "No?" Logan snapped. "You people always say sorry after screwing something up." The air changed instantly. A few students exchanged uncomfortable looks. But nobody spoke. Nobody ever spoke when Logan targeted someone. On the far side of the cafeteria, Mia Carter glanced up from her table, her expression tightening slightly as she watched the scene unfold. Unlike everyone else, she didn't look entertained. Zora tried to step backward. "I don't want trouble." Logan smirked. "That's funny. Because trouble always seems to follow people like you." He stepped closer. "Tell me something. Zora, did you actually earn your place here? Or did Blackwood need another diversity photo for their website?" The laughter grew louder. Zora felt every eye in the cafeteria drilling into her skin. Heat rushed into her face, but she refused to cry. That would only make it worse. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. She turned to walk away. Logan grabbed the collar of her shirt and yanked her backward so violently that her tray crashed onto the floor. Food scattered across the tiles. Gasps echoed through the cafeteria. "Don't walk away while I'm talking to you." For a split second, Zora saw a teacher near the entrance begin moving toward them. Relief flashed across her face. Then the vice principal stepped in front of the teacher and grabbed his arm. "Don't," he whispered sharply. "But he's assaulting her. You do not get involved with the Mercer family." The teacher hesitated and stopped. That hurt worse than anything else. Not the humiliation. Not the laughter. The silence. The surrender. Hundreds of people watching a line being crossed and collectively deciding it was safer to pretend nothing was happening. Logan stared directly into Zora's eyes, making sure the entire cafeteria was watching. "Maybe next time you'll remember where you belong." Then crack. The slap exploded across the cafeteria. Zora stumbled sideways into a table as her vision blurred. A sharp ringing filled her ears. Somewhere nearby, somebody muttered, "Oh me God," while others immediately lifted their phones higher to record. Nobody moved. Nobody helped her. Logan adjusted his jacket calmly, almost proudly. While his teammates laughed behind him, one student whispered that Logan had gone too far. But he whispered it quietly enough to avoid being heard. Zora pressed a trembling hand against her burning cheek. She could taste blood inside her mouth. The humiliation was unbearable. But the thing crushing her chest was realizing how many people seemed relieved that it was happening to someone else instead of them. Mia Carter stood up suddenly from her table. For 1 second, it looked like she might intervene, but Logan glanced toward her, and even she stopped. Zora bent down silently to pick up her scattered notes while cameras recorded every second. Nobody offered to help. One boy near the back actually laughed as she gathered papers stained with spilled juice from the floor. Logan leaned closer one last time. "You should have stayed invisible." Then he walked away. The cafeteria noise slowly returned. But it sounded different now. Lower. Uneasy. Guilty. Zora walked out of Blackwood High alone. The moment she reached the parking lot, her phone vibrated. It was her mother. Zora answered without speaking. Her mother's voice sounded panicked. "I heard what happened." That meant the video was already spreading. "I'm fine," Zora whispered. "No. Listen to me carefully." Her mother lowered her voice. "Do not fight them. Do you understand? Stay quiet. Don't post anything. Don't talk to reporters if they call." Zora stopped walking. "You want me to do nothing, I want you safe." "So they just get away with it." Her mother didn't answer immediately. Finally, she whispered the words that shattered something inside Zora even more than the slap itself. "People like the Mercers always get away with it." The line went dead. That night, Blackwood High exploded online. Clips from the cafeteria spread across social media faster every hour. Students reposted them anonymously. Comments flooded in. Some defended Logan. Others called it racist assault. Millions of strangers were suddenly arguing about Zora Mitchell while she sat alone in the dark, staring at her bruised reflection in the bathroom mirror. Near midnight, the house phone rang. Not her cell phone. The old landline. Zora frowned and answered carefully. Static crackled through the receiver. Then a calm male voice spoke. "Miss Mitchell, yes. This is Commander Reeves with the United States Navy." Zora froze. The voice continued. "Admiral Elijah Kane has been informed about what happened today." Silence filled the room. Then the commander added one final sentence. "He is already on his way." By 8 o'clock the next morning, Blackwood High already felt different. The atmosphere across campus carried the nervous electricity of a place waiting for something terrible to happen. Students moved through the hallways, whispering over their phones, pretending not to stare whenever Zora Mitchell passed by. The video from the cafeteria had spread far beyond the school overnight. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Some called Logan Mercer a racist bully. Others accused Zora of playing the victim. News accounts had already begun reposting clips from anonymous student pages, and every hour the situation grew uglier. But despite the chaos exploding online, Blackwood's administration acted as though nothing had happened. Teachers avoided discussing it. The vice principal walked the halls with forced confidence. Principal Warren Pike even sent out a school-wide email calling the incident an unfortunate misunderstanding between students. Then, at exactly 8:17 a.m., 3 black military SUVs rolled through the front gates. Every conversation on campus stopped instantly. The vehicles moved slowly across school grounds, polished black paint, reflecting the morning sun like armored shadows. Students near the parking lot immediately pulled out their phones, assuming it was some kind of military recruitment event or patriotic assembly, but confusion spread when nobody from the administration came out smiling for photographs. Instead, teachers began whispering frantically into radios while security guards suddenly looked terrified. The first SUV door opened. A tall man in full Navy dress uniform stepped out onto the pavement. His chest carried rows of ribbons and medals most students couldn't even identify. Silver hair, hard eyes, controlled posture. Behind him emerged 2 more senior officers in matching uniforms. The sight alone silenced the entire entrance area. Then someone whispered the name: Admiral Elijah Kane. The reaction was immediate. Even students who knew nothing about the military understood from the adults' faces that this was not normal. Teachers straightened instinctively. Security guards stepped backward. One administrator nearly dropped his coffee while hurrying toward the front office. Inside the main building, Principal Warren Pike felt the blood drain from his face when he saw the security monitor feed. He had spent the entire night trying to contain the disaster. Senator Victor Mercer himself had called twice, demanding the school keep control of the narrative. Pike thought he could survive the scandal by delaying statements and protecting Logan long enough for public attention to fade. Then Admiral Kane arrived. And suddenly, the situation no longer belonged to the school. "Get them into my office immediately," Pike snapped nervously. But Admiral Kane never went to the office. He walked straight through the main hallway without slowing down once, his polished shoes striking the floor with cold precision, while students pressed themselves against lockers to let him pass. The 2 naval generals followed closely behind him like silent shadows. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Zora stood frozen near her locker as the admiral approached. For the first time since yesterday, she looked genuinely shaken. She had not seen her grandfather in almost 2 years. Elijah Kane was the kind of man who existed more in newspapers and television interviews than real life. Decorated war hero, national security advisor, one of the most respected military leaders in the country, and now he was walking through Blackwood High because someone had slapped his granddaughter. The admiral stopped directly in front of her. His eyes moved to the fading bruise on her cheek. For a brief second, anger flashed across his face. Not loud anger, the dangerous kind. "You all right?" he asked quietly. Zora nodded, even though her throat tightened instantly. Admiral Kane studied her for another moment before finally saying, "Stay close to me." Then he continued walking, straight toward the cafeteria. By the time he entered the room, word had already spread across the building. Hundreds of students packed around entrances, pretending to eat while secretly filming everything on their phones. Logan Mercer sat at the center table with his teammates exactly where he always sat, leaning back casually like he owned the school. But unlike yesterday, the confidence around him looked slightly forced. Principal Pike rushed into the cafeteria seconds later, sweating through his collar. "Admiral Kane," he began nervously. "If we could discuss this privately, pull the surveillance footage." Kane interrupted. The cafeteria fell silent. Pike blinked. "Excuse me, the security footage from yesterday's assault," the Admiral said calmly. "Play it." A dangerous pause followed. Pike adjusted his tie. "Unfortunately, student privacy laws. Do not insult my intelligence." The room went still. Pike glanced briefly toward Logan before lowering his voice. "This situation is already being exaggerated online. We're trying to avoid unnecessary escalation." At that moment, Logan stood up. "You really dragged the military into a high school argument," he said with a smirk. "That's pathetic." Several students looked horrified, but Logan kept going. "She spilled water on me. I barely touched her." Admiral Kane slowly turned toward him. The entire cafeteria felt colder. "You assaulted my granddaughter in front of hundreds of witnesses." Logan shrugged. "And what exactly are you going to do about it?" One of the naval officers beside Kane stiffened immediately. But the Admiral himself remained perfectly calm. That calmness was worse. "Young man," Kane said quietly, "your family's influence may control this school. It may even control this town. But you are now part of a federal investigation involving violence against the family member of an active military command authority." Principal Pike's face turned white. What someone whispered nearby. Kane reached into his coat and placed a document onto a cafeteria table. "Under federal jurisdiction," he continued, "I am formally requesting access to all security footage, disciplinary records, and internal communications related to this incident." Pike stared at the paperwork like it was a death sentence. Logan laughed once, though the sound lacked confidence now. "You think you can scare me?" Admiral Kane stepped closer. Not aggressive, not loud, just absolute authority. "No," he said, "I think you just made the biggest mistake of your life." The silence afterward felt suffocating. Then suddenly a phone notification echoed through the cafeteria. Another. Another. Students everywhere began pulling out their devices at once. Someone had reposted the slap video, not the short clip from yesterday. The full recording. Wide angle. Clear audio. Logan's racist comments fully audible. Within minutes, major news pages picked it up. 5 minutes later, Wu-Bei. 000 views. 8 minutes, 7 million. 10 minutes later, 3 million people had watched Logan Mercer slap Zora Mitchell across the face. And all across Blackwood High, panic began spreading faster than anyone could stop it. By the following morning, the video had become impossible to escape. It played on phones inside airports, restaurants, classrooms, office elevators, and military bases across the country. News anchors replayed the footage frame by frame, while social media exploded into endless arguments beneath the hashtag number Justice for Zora. Millions of people watched Logan Mercer slap Zora Mitchell in the middle of Blackwood High's cafeteria, while an entire room full of students stood frozen in silence. Some viewers focused on the violence itself. Others focused on the racist remarks that came before it. But what disturbed people most was the reaction afterward. The teachers who looked away, the students who kept filming, the administration that tried to pretend nothing serious had happened. Overnight, Blackwood High transformed from an elite private academy into the center of a national scandal. Logan Mercer became known online as the Monster of Blackwood. Memes flooded the internet. Athletes publicly condemned him. Civil rights organizations demanded investigations. Even celebrities reposted the video with furious captions calling out racism and abuse of privilege in elite schools. Every hour the outrage intensified. Protesters began gathering outside Blackwood High, holding signs demanding Logan's expulsion. Reporters camped outside the school gates from sunrise onward. Helicopters circled overhead during morning classes. Inside the building, teachers struggled to maintain order because students spent entire lessons refreshing their phones under desks, tracking the latest updates like they were watching a public execution unfold in real time. But inside the Mercer estate, the mood was very different. Senator Victor Mercer sat at the head of a massive glass conference table, while televisions across the room replayed the cafeteria footage on every news channel. His expression never changed. Calm, controlled, dangerous. Around him sat political consultants, attorneys, and crisis management specialists speaking in tense voices, while Logan paced angrily nearby. "This is getting out of control," one consultant muttered. "Public sympathy is overwhelmingly on the girl's side." Victor Mercer barely looked up, then changed the narrative. Silence filled the room. One media strategist leaned forward carefully. "Sir, the full video is extremely damaging." Then, "Stop showing the full video." Within hours, the counterattack began. Major online accounts suddenly started posting old-school rumors about Zora Mitchell. Anonymous threads accused her of being aggressive toward classmates. Fake screenshots appeared online, suggesting she had previously insulted students and caused trouble at Blackwood High. Comment sections shifted almost immediately. Influencers paid by Mercer-backed media firms began framing Logan as a teenager whose life was being destroyed over one mistake. Television commentators debated whether America was overreacting. One network even invited a former athlete to argue that Logan had simply lost his temper under pressure. Then came the worst part. A new video clip appeared online. Shorter, edited, manipulated. In this version, the footage began seconds later than the original recording. Zora appeared angry and visibly frustrated while Logan's racist comments were completely removed. The edited clip made it seem as though she had insulted him first before he reacted. Millions who had never seen the original version immediately believed it. The country split in half almost overnight. Number Justice for Zora continued trending. But now another hashtag rose beside it. Stand with Logan. The internet became a war zone. Zora watched it happen in real time from her bedroom floor, her laptop illuminating the darkness around her, while notifications poured endlessly across the screen. Thousands of strangers dissected her face, her voice, her past, her race, even the way she stood in the cafeteria. Some called her brave, others called her manipulative. Racist messages flooded her inbox every minute. One account posted her home address. Another sent a death threat. By midnight, someone had edited monkey emojis over screenshots of her face and reposted them thousands of times. Her breathing became shallow. She stopped opening most messages after that. Downstairs, her mother paced anxiously through the kitchen, while television reporters discussed their family like they were fictional characters. Every time another notification sound echoed from Zora's phone, her mother visibly flinched. "This has to stop," she whispered finally. Zora didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the screen, where commentators debated whether she had provoked the attack. Her mother crossed the room and closed the laptop. "We're leaving Blackwood." Zora looked up slowly. "What, we can transfer you somewhere else? Another district? Another city if we have to. You want me to run? I want my daughter alive." The words hit harder than expected. For the first time since the slap, Zora felt genuine fear crawl into her chest. Not fear of Logan. Fear of what this entire situation was becoming. She couldn't walk outside without cameras following her. She couldn't open social media without seeing strangers debating whether she deserved to be humiliated. Every second of her life now belonged to the internet. Meanwhile, at Blackwood High, panic spread through the administration offices. Principal Warren Pike sat inside an emergency school board meeting while members argued loudly around him. Donations were already being threatened. Parents demanded answers. Some board members wanted Logan suspended immediately to calm public outrage. Others feared retaliation from Senator Mercer, whose political influence had protected the school for years. "We cannot survive a federal investigation," one board member hissed. Pike wiped sweat from his forehead. "Mercer says he can contain this." "Contain it," another snapped. "The entire country is watching us." But even while adults argued behind closed doors, students across Blackwood continued secretly sharing new clips from the cafeteria incident. Different angles, different audio recordings. The truth kept leaking faster than anyone could suppress it. Late that night, exhausted and emotionally numb, Zora sat alone in her room staring at hundreds of hateful comments flooding beneath the edited video. Her hands trembled slightly as she locked her phone screen and buried her face in her arms. Then her phone vibrated once more. Another anonymous message. At first, she almost ignored it. But something about this one felt different. No username. No profile picture. Just a single sentence attached to a video file. "I have the full recording." Zora froze instantly. Then a second message appeared beneath it. "It's Mia Carter." The message from Mia Carter arrived at 1:13 in the People-11 morning. But Zora Mitchell did not respond immediately. She stared at the screen for nearly 2 full minutes, reading the same sentence again and again while rain tapped softly against her bedroom window. In Blackwood High, Mia Carter was more than popular. She was untouchable in a completely different way than Logan Mercer. Beautiful, rich, socially flawless. The kind of girl teachers adored, and students followed without question. People like Mia didn't secretly message girls like Zora in the middle of the night offering help. Especially not after spending years standing beside Logan Mercer, like the perfect golden couple of Blackwood's elite world. Yet the video file attached to the message was real. Zora watched it twice in complete silence. Unlike the manipulated clip spreading online, this version showed everything. Logan's racist comments, his friends laughing, the vice principal stopping a teacher from intervening. Every disgusting second was clear and undeniable. Whoever filmed it had been standing only a few feet away. At the bottom of the screen, another message appeared. "Meet me tomorrow. Alone." The location attached was an abandoned storage building behind Blackwood's football stadium. Zora almost deleted the message instantly. Every instinct told her this could be a setup, but by the next afternoon, after another full day of nonstop harassment online and whispers in school hallways, desperation outweighed fear. The stadium parking lot sat nearly empty beneath gray evening skies when Zora arrived. Wind pushed loose papers across the pavement, while distant thunder rolled somewhere over the city. Mia's white Range Rover waited near the far end of the lot, hidden partially behind the equipment shed. Even parked, the vehicle looked expensive enough to belong to another universe entirely. Mia stood beside it wearing sunglasses and a dark hoodie, despite the fading daylight. "You came alone?" she asked immediately. Zora crossed her arms. "Why would I trust you?" Mia looked away briefly, almost guilty. "You shouldn't." That answer surprised her. For several seconds, neither girl spoke. The silence between them carried years of invisible social distance. Different worlds, different lives, yet somehow both trapped inside the same nightmare now. Finally, Mia motioned toward the old storage building near the stadium entrance. Inside, the building smelled like dust. damp wood, and old sports equipment. Metal shelves lined the walls while weak fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Mia shut the door behind them carefully before pulling out her phone. "What you saw online wasn't even the worst of it," she said quietly. Zora stared at her cautiously. "Why are you helping me?" Mia hesitated. Then she gave the answer Zora least expected. "Because Logan's been doing this for years." The room went still. Mia walked toward an old equipment table and leaned against it heavily, like she was carrying something exhausting inside her chest. "You think you were the first person he humiliated?" she asked bitterly. "He's destroyed people at this school for fun. Onebi-wan." She started naming them. A sophomore wrestler, Logan, allegedly beat unconscious during freshman year after a party. A scholarship student who transferred schools following racist harassment from Logan's friends. A girl from debate club who vanished from Blackwood after intimate photos leaked online. Every story sounded worse than the last. "And nobody reported him," Zora whispered. Mia laughed once. Not because it was funny. Reported him to who, she asked. "His father owns half the police department. Teachers protect him because they're terrified of losing funding. The administration buries everything." Zora felt cold all over. Part of her already knew Blackwood protected powerful students, but hearing it spoken aloud made the entire school suddenly feel rotten beneath the surface. Then Mia dropped the real bomb. "I know because I used to help him." Zora looked up sharply. Mia removed her sunglasses slowly, revealing eyes filled with shame and exhaustion. "Logan and I dated for almost 2 years. The words hung heavily in the room. He trusted me." Mia continued quietly. "He said things around me he'd never say in public." She unlocked her phone again and opened an audio recording. At first, only party music played through the speaker. Loud laughter. Glasses clinking. Then Logan's voice cut through the noise clearly. "I swear." The look on her face was priceless. He laughed. Everybody was staring. "I barely even hit her hard." More laughter followed. Then Logan added the sentence that made Zora's stomach turn. "I just wanted to make an example out of her." The recording ended. For several seconds, Zora couldn't breathe. The humiliation from the cafeteria came rushing back all at once. The silence, the phone's recording, the feeling of being publicly reduced into entertainment for people with power. He enjoyed it. She whispered. Mia nodded slowly. "Logan likes making people feel small. It's the only thing that makes him feel powerful." Outside, thunder cracked closer this time. Zora looked back toward Mia carefully. "Why now?" For the first time. Mia's confident mask cracked completely. "Because I realized one day that eventually he was going to destroy me too." Meanwhile, across town inside the Mercer estate, Senator Victor Mercer stood near his office window while a private investigator slid photographs across his desk. Grainy images showed Mia entering the stadium parking lot. Another showed Zora arriving minutes later. Victor's face darkened instantly. "She met with the girl?" he asked quietly. "Yes, sir." The investigator hesitated before continuing. "We also believe Miss Carter may possess unreleased recordings connected to your son." The room became dangerously silent. Logan sat nearby, scrolling through hateful comments online. But even he looked up nervously when he saw his father's expression. Victor Mercer slowly closed the folder. "Keep eyes on her," he said coldly. 24 hours a day. "You think she'll go public?" Victor's jaw tightened slightly. People become unpredictable when guilt starts eating them alive. Back at the stadium warehouse, Mia finally handed Zora a flash drive. "There's more on this," she whispered. "Videos. Audio. Namis." Zora stared at it like it might explode. "You're risking everything." Mia gave a weak smile. "You think I don't know that?" When they finally left the storage building, night had fully fallen over Blackwood. The parking lot looked almost deserted beneath the flickering lights. Wind rattled loose chains against the stadium fence while Mia walked toward her Range Rover. Then Zora noticed something strange. A black sedan parked across the street, engine running, headlights off. Mia saw it too. For the first time all night. Genuine fear crossed her face. They found out. She whispered, "Mia, it's fine." She lied quickly, climbing into her vehicle. "Just go home." The Range Rover pulled out fast onto the wet road, while the black sedan slowly followed several car lengths behind. Zora stood frozen beneath the parking lot lights, watching both vehicles disappear into the darkness. 10 minutes later, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. All she heard at first was heavy breathing. Then a terrified voice screamed through the line. "Oh my God!" Mia tires screeched violently in the background. Metal exploded. Glass shattered. And the call abruptly cut off. The crash scene looked like something pulled from a crime thriller instead of a quiet, suburban street outside Blackwood High. By the time Zora Mitchell arrived, red and blue police lights painted the rain-covered road in violent flashes, while firefighters cut through twisted metal beside the sidewalk. Mia Carter's white Range Rover had slammed directly into a concrete divider hard enough to crush the entire driver's side inward. Steam hissed from the destroyed engine. Broken glass glittered across wet asphalt like shattered ice. Reporters had not arrived yet, but students already crowded the sidewalks, filming everything from behind police tape. The atmosphere felt wrong immediately. Too controlled. Too fast. Officers were already redirecting traffic before the ambulance had even fully left the scene. Zora stood frozen beneath the rain, staring at the wreckage, while her heartbeat pounded violently inside her ears. 20 minutes earlier, Mia had been standing beside her alive, terrified, handing over evidence capable of destroying Logan Mercer forever. Now her car looked like it had been hit by a missile. An officer blocked Zora before she could cross the tape. "You can't be here." "Was she alive?" Zora demanded. The officer avoided eye contact. The driver was transported to St. Vincent Memorial. "Is she okay?" I said. "Step back." The answer alone told her everything. At the hospital, the atmosphere felt even colder. Television screens in waiting areas already displayed breaking news headlines, calling the collision a high-speed teenage driving accident. Nurses moved quickly through bright white corridors, pretending not to recognize Zora, despite clearly whispering about her moments earlier. Admiral Elijah Kane stood near the intensive care unit entrance in full silence, his expression carved from stone, while two Navy officers remained positioned nearby, like silent guards. When Zora approached, the Admiral finally spoke without looking at her. "She's alive." Relief hit her so hard she nearly lost balance. "But barely," he continued quietly. "Severe head trauma. Internal bleeding. She hasn't regained consciousness." Zora lowered her eyes. Guilt wrapped around her chest instantly. Mia would never have been on that road if she had not chosen to help. A doctor stepped from the ICU moments later, exhaustion visible across his face. "We stabilized her condition," he explained carefully. "But the next 24 hours are critical." Critical. The word echoed in Zora's head long after the doctor walked away. Across the hospital lobby, reporters began gathering near the entrance as news of Mia's identity spread online. Another Blackwood High student connected to the Mercer scandal. Another headline. Another media storm. By sunrise, police had already released their official preliminary statement: vehicle collision caused by excessive speed during wet road conditions. That was it. No mention of the black sedan following Mia. No mention of witnesses hearing another vehicle accelerate moments before impact. No mention of the terrified phone call. Just an accident. At Blackwood High. Students immediately began debating conspiracy theories online. Some believed Mia lost control while distracted by media pressure. Others whispered that the Mercers had silenced her before she could release more evidence. The school administration strongly encouraged students not to spread harmful rumors, which only made suspicion worse. But Zora noticed something nobody else seemed willing to question. Traffic cameras near the intersection had vanished from police reports entirely. That afternoon, she sat inside Admiral Kane's temporary hotel suite, reviewing public accident documents on her laptop while rain hammered against the windows outside. Every nearby intersection should have contained traffic surveillance. Blackwood was one of the wealthiest districts in the state. Cameras covered almost every major road. Yet somehow, footage from the exact crash location was unavailable. Camera malfunction, the report claimed. Zora stared at the screen in disbelief. Admiral Kane read silently over her shoulder before his jaw tightened slightly. Convenient. You think somebody erased it? The Admiral didn't answer immediately. That silence frightened her more than words would have the... Meanwhile, across town inside the Mercer estate, Logan Mercer had not slept in nearly 2 days. The internet hatred had become relentless. Millions of strangers now knew his face. His name flooded headlines every hour beside words like racist, abuser, monster. Former teammates stopped answering his calls. Sponsors quietly withdrew interest from athletic recruitment deals. Even some of his friends began distancing themselves publicly online. Logan sat alone in the dark living room, replaying the cafeteria video again and again on his phone, despite knowing every second already. Each replay somehow looked worse, more violent, more cruel. He kept pausing on the moment Zora hit the table after the slap, staring at her expression like it was beginning to haunt him. Then another video would appear, another reaction channel, another public figure condemning him. His breathing became erratic. He hurled the phone across the room so hard it shattered against the fireplace. Victor Mercer entered seconds later, without reacting to the destruction. You need control. Logan laughed bitterly. Control, my life's over. No, Victor said coldly. Your life becomes over when weak people panic. Logan ran trembling hands through his hair. People think I'm some psychopath. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, then stopped behaving like one. For a brief second, genuine fear crossed Logan's face. Not fear of the public, fear of his father. Because deep down, he knew exactly what the Mercers did to problems. And Mia Carter had become a problem. Late that evening, Admiral Kane received an unexpected visitor at the hospital parking garage. A lone police officer waited near the lower stairwell. Glancing nervously around before approaching him, You shouldn't trust the investigation. The officer whispered quickly. Kane studied him carefully. Name doesn't matter. The officer's hands visibly shook. You think the crash was intentional? Kane asked. The man hesitated. Then he leaned closer. Senator Mercer controls this city, he said quietly. Judges, police captains, evidence lockers. If there was footage, it's already gone. The Admiral's face hardened instantly. You're making serious accusations. I know exactly what I'm saying. The officer swallowed hard. And if anyone finds out I spoke to you, my career's finished. Before Kane could ask another question, the officer turned and disappeared back into the shadows of the parking garage. Upstairs in the ICU, machines beeped steadily beside Mia's unconscious body, while rainwater crawled slowly down the hospital windows. Zora sat alone beside the bed holding Mia's phone, praying the hidden recording still existed somewhere inside it. Her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the device. Message. Photos. Videos. Then finally, the audio folder. Zora opened it and froze. The recording of Logan laughing about assaulting her was gone. Deleted. Blackwood no longer felt like a school. It felt like a city under occupation. News vans lined the streets outside campus every morning, while police cruisers sat permanently near the front gates, pretending to maintain order. Students walked through hallways whispering like witnesses inside a criminal investigation instead of teenagers attending class. Everywhere Zora Mitchell looked, she saw fear. Teachers avoided eye contact. Administrators locked office doors during lunch periods. Even Logan Mercer's football teammates had started separating themselves from him publicly, terrified their futures would be destroyed alongside his. Yet beneath the chaos, one truth became increasingly obvious to Zora. Somebody inside Blackwood was desperately trying to erase evidence before the situation spiraled beyond control. And they were getting close. 3 nights after Mia Carter's crash, Zora sat inside a dark booth at a 24-hour diner near downtown Blackwood, staring at a pale, skinny boy tapping rapidly across a laptop keyboard. Noah Reyes looked nothing like the image people imagined when hearing the word hacker. No black hoodie, no dramatic attitude, just messy hair, nervous eyes, and fingers moving with terrifying speed across glowing keys. "You're sure Mia backed up the files somewhere?" Noah asked quietly without looking up. "She told me there was more." Zora replied. "Videos. Audio recordings. Names." Noah frowned slightly. Then, if the files disappeared from her phone, somebody either remotely wiped them, he paused, or accessed her cloud storage directly. Rain hammered the diner windows while muted news coverage about the Mercer scandal played silently on televisions overhead. Another panel debate, another headline, another argument about privilege and race, but Noah ignored all of it as lines of encrypted code flickered across his screen. Then suddenly he stopped typing. His expression changed instantly. "What?" Zora asked. Noah slowly turned the laptop toward her. "You need to see this." On the screen sat a server access log from Blackwood High's internal database system. Security files, student disciplinary records, surveillance archive, and someone had remotely accessed all of it less than 48 hours before Mia's crash. Location origin, Governor's Administrative Office Network. Zora felt cold spread through her body. "That's impossible." Noah shook his head slowly. "No. What's impossible is a high school security system being accessed through a state government network, unless someone very powerful requested it." The implications settled heavily between them. Somebody connected to Senator Mercer had entered Blackwood's systems directly, and probably erased evidence. Meanwhile, across town inside the Mercer estate, Logan Mercer sat alone in his bedroom, surrounded by darkness, except for the pale light of his television screen. The slap video played again for what felt like the 100th time. Every replay made the comments worse in his head. Monster. Racist. Abuser. Psychopath. He couldn't escape it anymore. His face had become nationally recognizable overnight. Reporters chased his classmates. Protesters screamed outside his school. Random strangers online now discussed whether he deserved prison. He hadn't slept properly in days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Zora hitting the cafeteria table after the slap. Or worse, he heard himself laughing in Mia's recording. Logan suddenly grabbed a glass from his nightstand and hurled it against the wall with enough force to shatter it instantly. His breathing became uneven. A knock sounded at the door. "Go away." Victor Mercer entered anyway. The senator looked perfectly calm as always, dressed in a dark suit despite the late hour. "You're losing control," he said coldly. "They're ruining me." "No," Victor corrected quietly. "You're ruining yourself." Logan clenched his fists. "Did you have something to do with Mia's crash?" The silence that followed lasted too long. Victor's expression never changed. Careful. For the first time in his life, Logan genuinely feared his father. Not because he thought Victor would hurt him, because deep down, he realized his father might absolutely hurt someone else. Hours later, Noah and Zora stood outside Mia Carter's empty house beneath freezing rain. Yellow police tape still wrapped around sections of the front gate after investigators searched the property earlier that morning. Officially, Mia remained unconscious in intensive care. Unofficially, the entire town already treated her like a loose thread capable of unraveling powerful people. "You really think there's backup evidence inside?" Noah whispered. Zora nodded slowly. Mia trusted almost nobody. She wouldn't keep everything online. Noah carefully bypassed the side gate lock within seconds using a small electronic device from his backpack. "Remind me never to get into an argument with you." The joke landed flat. Every shadow around the property suddenly felt threatening. Inside, the house stood silent, except for distant thunder outside. Expensive furniture reflected brief flashes of lightning through massive glass windows, while family photographs lined the walls like frozen reminders of a normal life that no longer existed. Noah moved quickly toward Mia's upstairs bedroom while Zora searched the lower floor. Every creak of the house made her pulse spike harder. She kept imagining black sedans outside, armed security teams, Senator Mercer already waiting in the dark. Then, a loud crash echoed upstairs. Zora sprinted toward the staircase. "Noah!" No response. Another noise. Metal scraping violently against wood. Zora reached the hallway just as Noah burst from Mia's room, pale with panic. "Someone's here." The lights downstairs suddenly shut off. Darkness swallowed the house instantly. Zora's heartbeat exploded. Heavy footsteps moved slowly somewhere below them. Not rushing. Walking. Like whoever entered knew exactly where they were. Noah whispered, "Back window." But before they could move, a flashlight beam cut sharply through the darkness. A man stood at the end of the hallway. School security uniform. Blackwood High. Not police. Not military. One of the campus security officers. The man looked exhausted more than dangerous. His flashlight trembling slightly as he lowered it toward the floor. "You kids shouldn't be here," he muttered. Zora stared at him in disbelief. "You're working for Mercer." The man's face tightened painfully. "No," he said quietly. "That's the problem." He stepped closer carefully. "There are people searching this house tonight. Real professionals. If they find what Mia hid before you do, it disappears forever." Noah glanced nervously toward the stairs. "Then help us." The security officer hesitated. Then he whispered the sentence that froze both of them instantly. "If you release those files publicly," his eyes shifted toward the dark windows, "people are going to die." Before Zora could respond, headlights suddenly swept across the front of the house. More vehicles arriving. The security officer's expression changed instantly. "Too late." He shoved a small flash drive into Zora's hand. "Run." The next few seconds exploded into chaos. Voices outside. Car doors slamming. Flashlights cutting through windows. Noah grabbed Zora's wrist and dragged her toward the back staircase, while footsteps thundered into the house below. Someone shouted orders downstairs. Furniture crashed violently. The entire mansion suddenly sounded alive with people tearing it apart room by room. Rain poured heavily as Noah and Zora escaped through a rear side door into the darkness behind the property. Neither stopped running until they reached Noah's car 3 streets away. Only then did they finally breathe. Hands shaking violently. Noah inserted the flash drive into his laptop. For several terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then folders appeared. Videos. Audio recordings. Deleted archives. Noah clicked the first recovered file. Static crackled briefly before the image stabilized. A private party inside the Mercer estate. Loud music. Drunk laughter. Then Logan appeared on screen holding a drink, while several football players laughed around him, and clear as day, his voice echoed through the speakers. "My dad owns this school anyway." The room laughed. Logan smirked directly toward the camera. "So nobody's gonna do a damn thing." The FBI arrived at Blackwood High on a gray Thursday morning just before first period. And the effect on campus was immediate. Students stopped mid-conversation as 3 dark federal vehicles rolled through the front gates beneath pouring rain. This time there was no confusion about why they were there. Men and women in navy jackets marked FBI stepped out carrying folders, evidence cases, and expressions that instantly shattered the illusion that Blackwood's administration still had control of the situation. Teachers watched nervously from classroom windows, while reporters gathered outside the school perimeter almost faster than the agents themselves. Helicopters circled overhead again. Phones came out everywhere. Within minutes, photographs of federal agents entering Blackwood High flooded social media, beside a new trending phrase, the Mercer investigation. Inside the main office, Principal Warren Pike looked seconds away from collapse. 2 FBI agents sat across from him calmly reviewing documents, while another photographed computer systems near the administrative desk. The atmosphere inside the room felt suffocatingly professional, which somehow made it even more terrifying. "We are requesting full access to student disciplinary records from the past 10 years. One agent stated flatly. Pike forced a weak smile. "Of course, we intend to cooperate fully." But his trembling hands told a different story, because Warren Pike understood something the students outside did not. If federal investigators saw everything Blackwood had buried over the years, the school itself might not survive. Meanwhile, 40 miles away inside the Mercer estate, Senator Victor Mercer exploded with fury the moment he saw FBI footage on television. The remote control shattered against the fireplace after he threw it hard enough to crack marble. "They do not have enough for a federal investigation," he snapped. One of his attorneys spoke cautiously. The Navy involvement changed jurisdictional pressure. Once the recording surfaced online, federal review became politically unavoidable. Victor turned slowly. "Then make it avoidable." The room fell silent. Ethan Logan, sitting pale and exhausted near the corner of the room, avoided eye contact with his father now. The past week had hollowed him out completely. Dark circles shadowed his eyes from days without sleep. Every new leaked recording pushed him closer to psychological collapse. His social media accounts had become unusable under the avalanche of hate flooding them every minute. Universities quietly withdrew interest. Sponsors disappeared. Former friends leaked private stories online just to distance themselves from him. And now the FBI had entered his school. Victor grabbed his phone immediately. "Get me Pike." At Blackwood High. Principal Pike answered the call from inside his office with visibly shaking hands. "You told me this was contained." Victor hissed the second the line connected. "They have warrants." Pike whispered. "Federal warrants. Then destroy anything they haven't seen yet." Pike froze. "Senator, do it now." The line disconnected. For several long seconds, Pike simply stood there sweating beneath fluorescent lights, while muffled voices echoed from the hallway outside. Then, with trembling movements, he crossed toward a locked filing cabinet hidden behind his office bookshelf. Inside sat years of sealed disciplinary reports, complaints, assault accusations, harassment investigations quietly buried to protect Blackwood's reputation and the Mercer family. Pike reached toward the files, then stopped. A voice behind him spoke quietly. "You should have done the right thing years ago." Pike turned sharply. Standing in the doorway was Daniel Everett, an English teacher who had worked at Blackwood for nearly a decade. Unlike most faculty members, Everett never looked intimidated by administrators or wealthy parents. Today, though even he looked exhausted. "You have no idea what these people are capable of," Pike muttered. Everett's expression darkened. "Actually, I do." Before Pike could respond, Everett placed a thick external hard drive onto the desk between them. "I made copies," he said. Pike stared at him. "Copies of what?" "Everything." The room suddenly felt colder. "For 8 years," Everett continued quietly. "Every report the school buried. Every complaint that vanished. Every student threatened into silence. I copied all of it." Pike's face drained of color. "You insane bastard." "No," Everett replied bitterly. "Just tired." Hours later, inside a secure FBI conference room downtown, agents reviewed the files from Everett's hard drive, while Admiral Elijah Kane stood silently nearby. Onebi-1. Horrifying patterns emerged across the documents. Assault allegations quietly dismissed. Racist incidents reclassified as student disputes. Witness intimidation. Parents pressured into withdrawing complaints after private meetings with administrators connected to Senator Mercer. But then one particular file stopped the room cold. Case number BH 1187. Victim: Ethan Cole. Status: deceased. An FBI agent frowned. Suicide. Daniel Everett nodded heavily from across the table. 2 years ago. Silence settled across the room. Everett swallowed hard before continuing. Ethan was relentlessly bullied after accusing Logan Mercer and several athletes of assault during sophomore year. The administration buried the investigation within 48 hours. He paused. 3 months later, Ethan killed himself. Nobody spoke. Even seasoned federal investigators looked disturbed reading the details. Screenshots of online harassment, anonymous threats, teacher statements, ignored by administration. Evidence suggesting Ethan begged repeatedly for help before his death. And buried deep within the files sat multiple mentions of Logan Mercer's name. What had started as a viral school assault scandal suddenly transformed into something far darker. Systemic abuse. Institutional corruption. A possible cover-up connected to a student's suicide. National media exploded within hours after details leaked online. Headlines changed immediately. Not teen slap controversy. Now, did Blackwood High protect abusers? For years, cable news networks interrupted programming for special reports. Former Blackwood students began posting their own stories publicly. Civil rights attorneys demanded criminal investigations. Protesters gathered outside both Blackwood High and Senator Mercer's office, carrying photographs of Ethan Cole beside signs, reading, "You knew." Inside the Mercer estate, Victor finally looked genuinely unsettled for the first time since the scandal began. Because suicide changed everything. The public could forgive arrogance. They could debate one violent incident. But a dead student transformed the story into national outrage. Logan sat silently watching news coverage replay. Ethan Cole's photograph beside his own face on split screens. His breathing became uneven again. "I didn't touch that kid," he whispered weakly. Victor turned toward him sharply. "Then stop acting guilty." But Logan no longer looked convinced himself. That night, outside a crowded television studio in downtown Blackwood, reporters suddenly rushed toward unexpected movement near the barricades. Cameras swung wildly through the rain as a woman slowly stepped forward holding a framed photograph against her chest. Ethan Cole's mother. Her eyes looked exhausted beyond words. Yet steady, microphones immediately surrounded her as silence spread through the crowd. Then, staring directly into the cameras, broadcasting live across the country, she spoke. "My son begged them for help," she said quietly, and the entire nation listened. The FBI stopped treating Blackwood High like a school investigation After the financial records surfaced within 48 hours, the case expanded into something far larger and far more dangerous than anyone outside federal offices understood. What began as a viral assault video now exposed the foundations of an entire power structure built on intimidation, corruption, and money laundering, hidden beneath the polished image of one of America's wealthiest school districts. Blackwood was no longer simply protecting privileged students. It was operating like a machine designed to erase consequences for the powerful at any cost. And at the center of it all stood Senator Victor Mercer. By Friday morning, federal agents had quietly seized financial records connected to Blackwood's Scholarship Foundation. On paper, the foundation existed to support disadvantaged students and diversity initiatives. In reality, FBI forensic accountants discovered millions of dollars routed through shell companies connected to Mercer donors, private contractors, and offshore accounts. Some payments disappeared into fake construction projects. Others resurfaced inside political action committees linked directly to Victor Mercer's re-election campaigns. The deeper investigators looked, the uglier it became. Bribes disguised as security consulting fees, police departments receiving suspicious donations shortly before complaints against Blackwood students vanished. Teachers pressured into signing confidentiality agreements after witnessing violence on campus. One math teacher admitted privately that he had been threatened with losing his pension after reporting racial harassment involving Logan Mercer 3 years earlier. Another staff member confessed she deleted student testimony under direct orders from administrators, terrified of angering Senator Mercer. Blackwood wasn't covering up isolated incidents. It was protecting an empire. News outlets exploded once leaked details reached the press. Primetime anchors stopped discussing school bullying entirely and started using phrases like organized corruption, abuse of power, and institutional intimidation. Protest crowds outside Blackwood High tripled overnight. Federal investigators now guarded parts of campus, while frightened teachers quietly cooperated behind closed doors. But inside the Mercer estate, the atmosphere had transformed into something almost unrecognizable. For the first time in his life, Logan Mercer realized his father might sacrifice absolutely anyone to survive. Including him, Victor Mercer stood inside his private office, speaking calmly with attorneys, while multiple televisions displayed non-stop scandal coverage. Logan watched from the doorway, pale and exhausted, barely listening until he heard one sentence. "If necessary," Victor said coldly. "We isolate Logan's actions from broader political accusations." Logan froze. One attorney nodded carefully. A narrative focused on emotional instability could reduce liability. Reduce liability. They were discussing him like damaged property. Victor finally noticed Logan standing there. "Get some sleep." Logan stared at him in disbelief. "You're gonna blame this on me." Victor's expression never changed. "You slapped the girl. You told me nobody could touch us." The senator stepped closer slowly. "Control yourself." For years, that voice had always worked. Calm, précis, dominant. But now Logan saw something underneath it for the first time. Fear. Real fear. Because Victor Mercer understood something his son did not. Assault scandals could survive news cycles. Corruption investigations could sometimes be buried. But once the FBI started uncovering financial crimes tied to dead students and systemic abuse, political careers collapsed fast. And Victor Mercer cared about power more than family. Logan backed away slowly, breathing uneasily. "Different. You'd let them destroy me." Victor adjusted his cufflinks. "I will not allow one reckless teenager to destroy everything I built." The sentence hit harder than any public outrage online ever had. For the first time since the cafeteria incident, Logan genuinely looked like a frightened child instead of an arrogant king. That night, unable to sleep again. Logan wandered through the massive Mercer estate, while rain battered the windows outside. The mansion suddenly felt cold and unfamiliar, like he was walking through someone else's life. Every hallway carried memories of expensive dinners, political fundraisers, carefully staged family photographs. But now all of it felt fake, especially the photographs. Near the library hallway, Logan stopped in front of a framed family portrait taken nearly 10 years earlier. Himself at age 8, Victor Mercer smiling beside him, and his mother, Evelyn Mercer, standing slightly apart from both of them. Logan stared at her face quietly. Nobody in the family talked about Evelyn anymore. Officially, she had left for treatment overseas years ago, following mental health struggles. That was the story repeated to media. Schools, family, friends, everyone. But suddenly, for reasons he couldn't explain, the story no longer felt true. He turned sharply as footsteps approached behind him. Margaret Holloway, the family's longtime housekeeper, froze when she saw what Logan was staring at. "You should be asleep," she muttered softly. Logan looked back at the photograph. "What really happened to my mother?" Margaret's face immediately tightened. "That's not something you should ask. That means you know." She glanced nervously toward Victor's office upstairs, before lowering her voice. "Your mother wanted to expose certain things." Logan's heartbeat slowed. What things? Margaret hesitated too long, then finally whispered. She found financial records, police payments, evidence connected to Blackwood. Logan stared at her in disbelief. "She tried going to federal investigators years ago," Margaret continued quietly. "Then one day she disappeared." The room suddenly felt suffocating. "What do you mean disappeared?" Margaret swallowed hard. "Your father told everyone she was unstable. After that, nobody ever saw her again." Logan felt physically ill. Every memory he had trusted his entire life suddenly twisted into something darker. The arguments, the sudden absence, the way Victor erased her from conversation so completely that eventually Logan stopped asking questions himself. Because asking questions inside the Mercer family was dangerous. Upstairs, thunder shook the mansion windows as Victor Mercer entered his private study alone. Unlike the chaos spreading outside, this room remained perfectly controlled. Dark wood shelves, expensive whiskey, political memorabilia lining the walls like trophies from decades of manipulation. Victor crossed toward an old painting near the fireplace, then paused. For the first time all night, his calm mask slipped slightly, because the FBI was getting too close. Slowly, he reached behind the painting and entered a hidden code into a steel keypad embedded inside the wall. A mechanical lock clicked. Behind the painting, a concealed safe door slowly opened. Victor stared silently into the darkness inside. And whatever sat hidden there was important enough to finally make even him nervous. The hidden safe behind Victor Mercer's office wall contained far more than financial records. When federal agents finally forced entry into the Mercer estate 2 days later under emergency warrant authorization, even veteran investigators fell silent at what they discovered inside. Classified military contracts, private intelligence reports, offshore account ledgers, confidential communications between politicians, law enforcement officials, and defense contractors stretching back nearly 2 decades. Entire folders carried national security clearance markings. Others contained photographs, signed agreements, and sealed testimony capable of destroying careers far beyond Blackwood High. This was no longer a corruption scandal. It was an ecosystem. Boxes of evidence were transported overnight to a federal facility under armed supervision, while news helicopters followed the convoy across state lines. Television anchors openly speculated about organized criminal conspiracy at the highest levels of government. Protesters gathered outside courthouses, chanting Victor Mercer's name like he was already convicted. Political allies publicly abandoned him one by one. Donors disappeared. Staff members resigned. Even National Party leaders stopped defending him in interviews. But the discovery that truly changed everything was buried inside a thin black folder marked Kane Mercer Communications. When Admiral Elijah Kane received the call from federal investigators requesting his immediate presence, he already knew before opening the file that the past had finally caught up with him. The interrogation room inside the federal building felt colder than the military briefing chambers he once commanded during wartime. Zora sat beside him in silence. While FBI agents carefully placed old documents across the steel table, she had barely spoken during the drive downtown. Too much had happened too fast. Mia remained hospitalized. Blackwood High faced permanent closure. Victor Mercer's empire was collapsing publicly by the hour. And now federal agents were looking at her grandfather differently. Not as a hero. As part of the story, one investigator opened the black folder carefully. 15 years ago, he began quietly. Senator Mercer was under federal review regarding unauthorized defense contracting payments tied to military procurement programs. Zora frowned slightly. What does that have to do with my grandfather? The agent slid forward another document. Signed by Admiral Elijah Kane. Recommendation for internal dismissal of investigation. Zora's breath caught instantly. The room went silent. Finally, Kane spoke. I remember the case. His voice sounded older than she had ever heard it before. The FBI agent nodded slowly. Records show your testimony effectively prevented Mercer's political career from collapsing. Zora turned sharply toward him. You protected him. Kane closed his eyes briefly. It wasn't supposed to become this. The answer felt like a punch to the chest. For years, Zora had viewed her grandfather as the one incorruptible person in a world controlled by fear and power. The man who walked into Blackwood High ready to fight for her when everyone else stayed silent. But now the image cracked apart right in front of her. What did he do? She whispered. Kane stared at the old documents for several long seconds before answering. Mercer was involved in illegal financial negotiations with defense contractors during a naval infrastructure project overseas. There wasn't enough evidence for criminal prosecution at the time. He paused heavily, but there was enough to end his career. Then why help him? The Admiral's jaw tightened. Because 15 years ago, I believed stability mattered more than scandal. He finally looked directly at her. And because I underestimated the kind of man Victor Mercer truly was. The guilt in his voice filled the room heavier than anger ever could. Kane explained slowly how Mercer had once positioned himself as a rising political reformer with strong military alliances and promises of national security modernization. At the time, exposing the scandal risked damaging sensitive defense negotiations already under international pressure. Kane convinced himself the situation could be quietly contained. So he protected Mercer. Not publicly, but enough. Enough for Victor Mercer to survive. Enough for him to rise higher. Enough for the monster to grow. Zora felt sick listening to it. You knew he was dangerous. I knew he was ambitious. That's not the same thing. Kane had no answer. Outside the federal building, reporters screamed questions behind barricades, while helicopters thundered overhead. America had become obsessed with the Mercer scandal now because it no longer looked like one powerful family abusing a school system. It looked like a decades-long network of corruption, protected by politics, money, and silence at every level. And somewhere inside all of it stood people who once convinced themselves compromise was acceptable. People like Elijah Kane. Late that night, Zora sat alone inside the Admiral's hotel suite, staring through rain-covered windows at the city below. She could barely process the emotional exhaustion crushing her chest anymore. Every truth uncovered revealed another hidden layer beneath it. Teachers protected Logan. Administrators buried complaints. Police erased evidence. Politicians manipulated media. Even her own grandfather carried guilt connected to the foundation of Mercer's empire. Nothing felt clean anymore. Kane entered quietly holding 2 cups of coffee, but stopped when he saw the look on her face. "You think I'm part of this, aren't you?" The question landed brutally because it was honest. The Admiral sat down slowly across from her. "There's a difference between making a terrible decision and becoming the thing you failed to stop." Zora looked away. "Tell that to Ethan Cole's mother." Pain flashed across Kane's expression instantly. For the first time since this nightmare began, he looked less like a legendary military commander, and more like an exhausted old man haunted by choices he could never undo. "I spent years believing I prevented something worse," he admitted quietly. "Now I look around and realize every compromise simply gave Mercer more power." The silence afterward felt devastating. Then Kane's secure phone rang. He answered immediately. The voice on the other side spoke rapidly enough to change his expression at once. When another pause. Then, "How long until Wheels Up?" Zora looked toward him sharply as Kane slowly lowered the phone. "What happened?" His face hardened instantly into command mode again. "Victor Mercer is preparing to leave the country." The state capitol building looked more like a fortress than a government institution on the morning of the Mercer hearing. News vans stretched across 6 entire city blocks, while helicopters thundered overhead beneath dark storm clouds gathering across the skyline. Thousands of protesters filled the streets outside metal barricades, holding signs with Ethan Cole's face, Zora Mitchell's name, and photographs of Blackwood students who had spent years suffering beneath the invisible protection surrounding Logan Mercer and his father. Federal agents guarded every entrance. State police lined the stairways in tactical gear. Across the country, millions of people watched live broadcasts, waiting for what commentators were already calling the most explosive public corruption hearing in state history. Inside the chamber, the atmosphere felt suffocating. Rows of cameras pointed toward the witness tables beneath harsh white lights, while politicians whispered nervously behind stacks of documents. Reporters typed non-stop updates across glowing screens. Every empty seat filled before proceedings even began. Nobody wanted to miss the fall of Victor Mercer. At the center of the front row sat Zora Mitchell beside Admiral Elijah Kane. For the first time in weeks, she looked calm, not because the fear was gone, because exhaustion had burned through it. The past 10 days had transformed her entire life into a national battlefield. Her face appeared on magazine covers. Protesters shouted her name in streets she had never visited. Millions argued about her online every hour. But sitting inside that chamber, surrounded by cameras and federal investigators and politicians scrambling to save themselves, Zora realized something strange. The slap in the cafeteria no longer belonged to Logan Mercer. It belonged to everyone who stayed silent. The hearing began at exactly 9:00 a.m. on Ibi-1. Witnesses testified beneath oath, while the country watched in absolute silence. FBI investigators detailed financial crimes tied to Blackwood's Scholarship Foundation. Teachers described years of intimidation from administrators pressured by Mercer donors. Students recounted racist harassment, assaults, threats, and cover-ups buried by the school system to protect wealthy families. Then came Principal Warren Pike. The moment he entered the chamber, reporters nearly drowned the room in camera flashes. Pike looked destroyed. His shoulders slumped, his face gray with exhaustion. Gone was the confident administrator who once controlled Blackwood's image with rehearsed smiles and carefully worded emails. Now he looked like a man walking toward execution. Under questioning, Pike initially tried avoiding direct answers. But once federal prosecutors introduced internal emails connecting him to deleted disciplinary records, the collapse began fast. Yes, Pike whispered eventually. We buried complaints. Murmurs exploded across the chamber. Yes. Senator Mercer pressured the administration. Another wave of shocked voices followed. And yes, Pike finally admitted, his voice cracking completely. I knew students were being harmed. The silence afterward felt devastating. Minutes later, FBI agents escorted Pike directly out of the hearing chamber in handcuffs, while cameras broadcast the moment live across the country. Blackwood High's principal arrested on national television. But the nightmare was only beginning. Next came testimony from police officials connected to missing evidence surrounding Mia Carter's crash and Ethan Cole's death investigation. Under mounting pressure, the city police chief announced his immediate resignation before refusing further comment. Additional officers invoked legal counsel after being confronted with evidence tied to erased traffic footage and suppressed reports connected to Mercer allies. Every hour revealed another layer of rot, another betrayal, another adult who chose power over children. Meanwhile, Victor Mercer sat perfectly still at the defense table throughout all of it. His expression controlled, despite the political empire collapsing around him in real time. Advisors whispered urgently beside him, while prosecutors prepared federal racketeering charges tied to bribery, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and financial conspiracy. Yet somehow, he still looked dangerous. Still calculating. Still searching for escape. Then Logan Mercer entered the chamber. The room immediately shifted. Whispers spread like electricity through reporters and spectators alike, while cameras swung toward him from every angle. Logan looked almost unrecognizable from the arrogant athlete who once ruled Blackwood High's cafeteria. Weeks of public hatred and psychological collapse had hollowed him out completely. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His posture lacked confidence entirely. He looked less like a king now and more like a frightened boy trapped inside the wreckage of a family built on power and fear. Victor's expression tightened the moment Logan sat down, because nobody knew what he planned to say. Not even his own attorneys. The questioning started carefully at first. Logan admitted to slapping Zora publicly, admitted to racist remarks, admitted Blackwood students feared him because of his father's influence. Every confession sent waves of shock across social media in real time. But then the prosecutor asked one final question. Mr. Mercer, did your father ever pressure others to conceal misconduct involving you? The chamber went completely silent. Victor Mercer slowly turned toward his son. And for one long moment, Logan froze beneath the weight of his father's stare. Everyone watching expected him to protect the family, to deny everything, to stay loyal. Instead, Logan looked toward Zora. Really looked at her for the first time since the cafeteria. Not as an enemy, not as a target, as a human being. When he finally spoke, his voice shook. Yes. The room exploded instantly. Reporters shouted over each other while cameras flashed non-stop. Victor surged forward furiously. But federal officers immediately restrained movement near the defense table. Logan kept talking anyway. He confessed about buried assaults, about manipulated school investigations, about his father threatening teachers and students, about years spent believing wealth made consequences optional. And then finally, with millions watching live across the nation, Logan Mercer broke completely. I thought power meant people had to fear you. He whispered. That's how I was raised. The chamber fell silent again. Tears filled his eyes for the first time. I hurt people because I knew nobody would stop me. Victor Mercer stared at him with pure hatred now. But Logan no longer looked afraid of him. Not anymore. By the end of the hearing, federal prosecutors formally announced criminal charges against Victor Mercer while markets, donors, and political allies abandoned him publicly within hours. News networks called it one of the fastest political collapses in modern state history. Blackwood High's board dissolved under emergency review. Civil lawsuits flooded the courts. The Mercer Empire, intouchable, collapsed in less than 2 weeks, beneath truths it spent years trying to bury. Yet for Zora, the strangest moment came afterward. As crowds poured from the Capitol building beneath flashing lights and screaming reporters, Logan approached her alone near a secured hallway exit. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally, Logan lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Not performative. Not for cameras. Real." Zora studied him carefully. The bruise he left on her face had faded days ago. But the damage from that moment reached far beyond one slap now. Entire lives had shattered, because powerful people believed cruelty carried no consequences. Still, standing there, looking at Logan now, she saw something she had never understood before. Monsters were rarely born. Most were created. Created by silence, protected by fear, rewarded by power. And if hatred was all that survived this story, then, eventually, someone else would become the next Logan Mercer. Zora could not allow that, so she simply nodded once and walked away. Weeks later, Blackwood High reopened under federal oversight. Security systems changed. Administrators were replaced. New policies covered the walls. Students moved more quietly through hallways now, like survivors rebuilding after a disaster. During lunch on the first day back, a freshman boy carrying a tray accidentally bumped into an older athlete near the cafeteria center aisle. The older student immediately shoved him backward. The cafeteria went silent. The freshman froze, terrified. A month earlier, nobody would have moved. But this time, chairs scraped loudly across the floor. One student stood up, then another, then 20 more. The athlete looked around in confusion as the entire cafeteria slowly rose together beside the frightened freshman. No phones recording, no laughter, no silence. For the first time in Blackwood High history, someone finally stood up before it was too late. And maybe the most terrifying part of this entire story isn't the slap or the corruption, or even the lies powerful people buried for years. Maybe it's how many ordinary people stayed silent while it was happening. Blackwood High only changed when somebody finally stood up and said enough. But now I want to ask you something. If you had been inside that cafeteria on day one, would you have defended Zora? Or would you have looked away like everyone else? Let me know your answer down in the comments. And if this story kept you hooked until the end, make sure to like the video, share it with someone who loves intense drama stories, and subscribe to the channel for more cinematic stories about power, betrayal, revenge, and justice.